The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition of H.R. 471, the Fix Our Forest Act, sponsored by Chairman Westerman. And while this bill is flawed, and we'll be discussing those flaws here in a moment, I do appreciate that Chair Westerman and Representative Peters did come together and work on this issue in a bipartisan way that acknowledges our wildfire crisis. That is a good thing. Addressing that should be a bipartisan priority, and the Fix Our Forest Act includes some helpful provisions. For starters, it has incorporated a number of key democratic priorities that are in direct alignment with the recommendations of the Wildland Fire Mitigation and Management Commission. That's what's referenced in this poster here behind me. 148 nonpartisan consensus recommendations for making us safer from the threat of wildfire. And if this bill simply moved those consensus recommendations forward and also did something that the Commission told us we had to do, critical priority, fund them and make sure that the agencies responsible for overseeing these projects have staffing. If this bill were simply doing that, we wouldn't be here today because this bill would already be law. And many of these good things would already be keeping communities safer. But as you'll hear in a moment, this bill goes off on some tangents that have nothing to do with fire safety, and also, with respect to the good provisions it does include, fails to fund them. That's why we're here. That's why the path of this bill has been more complicated, and that is unfortunately a missed opportunity. We were able in this bill to include reauthorization of the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Program and the Joint Chiefs Landscape Restoration Partnership, sponsored by our newly re-elected Federal Lands Subcommittee Ranking Member Joe Neguse. The latest version of the bill also includes a revamped version of the Fireshed Center, which aligns with several of the Commission's consensus recommendations aimed at enhancing coordination, using predictive services, and unifying decision-making capabilities. I am glad that this bill has evolved to include these priorities my Democratic colleagues have championed. In fact, we have Democratic bills that do all of these good things and more, because fire safety is a huge concern for all of us. But our Democratic bills do not pair these good provisions unnecessarily with harmful environmental rollbacks, and that, unfortunately, is what the bill before us does do. Now, if you scratch beneath the surface of H.R. 471, you start seeing problems, starting with the fact that the beneficial provisions are totally unfunded. There's simply no money, no resources to help any of the good things actually happen. And there are also several poison pills that have the potential to undermine science-based management and public engagement. On top of doing nothing to address the key driver of catastrophic wildfires, climate change, the so-called Fix Our Forest Act inappropriately co-ops emergency authorities under the National Environmental Policy Act, undercuts the Endangered Species Act, and even makes it more difficult for communities to engage and scrutinize or even know about projects that could directly impact them. Wildfire is deadly serious. In a matter of minutes, iconic landscapes, entire neighborhoods can be reduced to ashes. I know because it's happened all too often in my district. It's not something politicians should use as a pretext to jam through unrelated industry favors or special interest agendas that undermine our foundational environmental protections. So let me be clear, House Democrats agree that we need to increase the pace and scale of restoration in our national forests and on public and private land. That's why we work to secure robust funding in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. This enabled the Biden-Harris administration to develop the wildfire crisis strategy and other key restoration activities. And thanks to the funding we provided, the Forest Service has been able to achieve record numbers for both hazardous fuels reduction and prescribed burning. They have even identified Southern California as a priority landscape through this work. The only thing holding them back from doing even more beneficial work on the ground is lack of money. However, as we're seeing with the Los Angeles fires, addressing the wildfire crisis is not all about work in the woods. Southern California is dominated by chaparral. or things like timber sales and clear cutting simply do not provide a fire safety solution for these communities. My Republican friends seem to think that logging is a panacea for fire safety, and in fact, it will do little or nothing to reduce wildfire risk in many of the most vulnerable communities. The fuel in the Los Angeles fires was not trees, the fuel was homes, schools, businesses. We will learn many lessons from this tragedy, but one that I hope we can take away right now is that we can't keep taking a siloed, myopic approach to wildfire management and prevention. Built environments like Los Angeles must be a priority, and we shouldn't have to fight lies and disinformation as our brave federal firefighters, who are already underpaid, are out there still fighting fires. I'd like to set the record straight on some of the misinformation and disinformation swirling around this debate. While Los Angeles has some of the strongest building codes and fire safety requirements in the nation, there are still thousands and thousands of homes that require retrofitting to ensure that they're adequately protected. Now, clearly, we've got a lot more work to do, and this bill misses the mark by failing to advance that work. Keeping homes and property resilient also requires constant upkeep and maintenance. Our communities need guidance, and again, more than anything else, they need resources to ensure that this happens. While Fix Our Forests includes a community wildfire risk program, which is a good thing, it's not enough. We need to pass the Wildfire Protection and Community Resilience Act that I introduced earlier this week with my Republican colleague, Congressman Obernolte, which provides actual resources to help local communities defend themselves from the growing danger of wildfires. Our bill would empower communities to implement science-based methods for mitigating wildfire damage, and we provide funding to design and implement new community protection and wildfire resilience plans with community members, first responders, and relevant state agencies. It would designate a targeted, specific grant program for home hardening within FEMA and add home hardening as an allowable project under an existing Forest Service program. The bill provides actual support with an adequate focus on the built environment, and that's why I filed it as an amendment to this bill. But unfortunately, the majority decided to move forward on this bill without allowing a vote on that and many other amendments. I had been hopeful that the amendment process would be an opportunity to address some of the critical gaps in this bill, especially the absence of a pay raise for our federal wildland firefighters, but that too has been left out. What happened in Los Angeles this month is a national tragedy, and in moments like this, we should overcome all politics and find ways to work together on solutions that actually help the people we're here to serve. And with that in mind, I want to discourage any of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who might want to embrace this wrong-headed idea that relief and support for Los Angeles can somehow be a bargaining chip or used as leverage to advance other policy goals. You're not going to turn California into a red state by hijacking critically needed disaster relief. And in fact, a thought like that never would have crossed our minds when we had the back of the people in Florida and North Carolina and Louisiana, and when we have simply been fellow Americans helping each other in the face of these terrible tragedies. That's the way it's always worked in this Congress, and I hope we're not going to set a terrible new precedent now. I will be recommending a no vote on this bill today. I hope that we can continue to work together, however, to improve this bill and to address all of the critical issues that have been left out. I also hope when it comes to the broader critical need for federal disaster relief, we can remember that we're all fellow Americans and we need to have each other's back in these moments. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from